All right, I think we're recording. Hello everybody. This is Darren Catalane of Team Talents and Robotics. It's currently midnight on the 26th of March. Uh, I had a test a couple hours ago, and I decided I'd just do a quick little video going over the chassis design of my Antweight Fluorine, most because I'm pretty bored and I can't really think of anything else better to do, and I got really nothing to do. Homework's all done, so why not just sort of go over the history of the robot a bit? I might make more of these, going over various aspects of the design, like the weapon frame and the weapon itself, just because I can. But for now, because I have a bag of old chassis which I've kept for some reason, I figured I'd just go over the history of how I've improved it over time, because some people might find it interesting. So, with that in mind, let's begin. So the first version of Fluorine ever built, it was a basic Viper kit that you get. That's pretty much most people's first robot, at least back when I got started. And I actually still have the chassis for it. Here it is. Nothing really to say. It's a standard Viper kit chassis. Nothing really of note. I mean, you could see from an early stage, I had the whole idea of putting a bunch of funny colors on it because to make it stand out. Um, the reason I stopped using this chassis in specifically was because the threaded inserts that hold the wedge on eventually all just came out, which kind of meant this was basically unusable because I didn't really know how to put in new inserts, and I still don't. So yeah, it's kind of beat up. It still has a couple marks from early battles, back when I was just a wedge and eventually a little lifter. So this eventually stopped working, so I believe this is I believe this is the second chassis I bought for it. I know I bought I think a total of 3, including the first one. And I know I used one of the chassis as like a test bed to hit just as a hitting target for what eventually became Fluorine 4. But yeah, here's another one. Same kind of color. Well, actually it's a bit different because I'm not really consistent with the color, or I wasn't consistent with the color of these things in the early days. It was only like 3 years ago. Yeah, a bit more damage. The somehow all 4 threaded inserts on the front survived, but I lost like 2 on the top, as you can see right there. Which is, I think that's why I stopped using this chassis. Um, yeah, again, not really much to say about these because I didn't design them. That changes with this next one. Um, here, this sticker fell off. This here is Fluorine Mark 3, I believe. Yeah, Mark 3, because this is like my first actual custom chassis. I believe I designed this in Fusion, and you can kind of tell it's my first design because look at all these nice sharp edges, and look at this honestly terrible wedge attachment design. And also just that massive hole I put in the side to get a motor in, and also here because I didn't know how to do thicknesses properly. And there's also no screw holes to attach a top lid on because I thought that I could just press fit it in and hope that was enough and maybe hold it in with some tape. Yeah, needless to say, this thing was not good. Like for a first custom design, I don't think it's awful. Like I could probably make this thing better nowadays in like 5 minutes and make it actually somewhat good, but yeah, this is all PLA. It's not really well printed because I didn't know how to do print settings back then. Like you can see, it's like it lifted up, which is a problem I still suffer from because I am really not good at 3D printing at all. But yeah, I forgot how scuffed this thing was. I'll be honest. Yeah. Then I redesigned this chassis a bit, and the first one was a failed print, which stopped printing like halfway through. So I used it to I kind of used it as a hitting target eventually. Yeah, not much to say here because it's a failed print. And here is the second version. 3.2 Mark 3.2. As you can see, I tried okay, so for this one, I tried to add like actual screw holes so I could, attach the top lid with like screws instead of just press fitting it in with and using tape because that didn't work because the top lid fell off in this thing this thing's only fight. So yeah, I had to change that. The problem was I made the screw holes too small, and also they were just again they were just too small, so I couldn't use them. So I had to like drill into the chassis and then like thread some screws in on like some metal tabs to get like a top plate on, which I mean it worked, but I still didn't also fix the wedge attachment. They're still horribly designed because of all those straight edges, and also again the inside is really hollow and thin when this should be a lot thicker in order to hold a wedge on. This thing had two fights, I think. Yeah, one against Tyrone where the wedge came off pretty much instantly, and another against a Lego robot that I had built, where I consider that a victory, even though it was kind of a freebie. And then I retired this thing. I will say this time I actually kind of got the screw holes for the dry motors right, so that's good. Not really much to say there, I'll be honest. What else? Okay. Next chassis on the list is this one. This chassis right here was for the I think I called it 3.3, which is the ant weight I had, which is the version I had with a giant wedge on the front that was actually good and made of like titanium, was off a D2 kit, and had like a lifting arm that I don't know. I'm honestly still shocked I managed to get everything to fit all the components inside this chassis because it is really cramped. um, like yeah, if you look in here, there's not much room. It's pretty short. In fact, I think it's about the same height. I don't know. I think it's a tad shorter than Fluorine currently is. And this is the first chassis design I was like really proud of because like I kind of finally figured out how to. First of all, it's made of TPU, which this is the first time I tried to print a chassis out of TPU, and it worked pretty well. This thing lasted like 3 events, I believe, or so, and it honestly is still in really excellent shape. Like, there's no real holes that aren't meant to be there, at least. I could probably still use this thing if I so desire, which I don't because I don't have a wedge anymore. Um, so yeah, I actually figured out how to make like holes that were actually big enough for the screws this time, and wedge attachments which were not completely awful. And also I had little like supports for the motors because I heard that was a good thing to do, so I did that for the drive motors. Had like proper holes where I could put in like the supports for the servo motor I used to lift the arm up, and also it had one hole at the back for the power switch instead of two for some reason because I think I just forgot to put two. um, there's no like wall at the front because there would be a wedge here, and that would act as the front wall. But even then, there was still like a tiny hole that like wires could slip through. I'm honestly shocked that I never got like wires sniped with this thing, considering how also thin the walls are. Um, yeah, like I said, pretty good shape still. There's like a tiny crack at the back there where I think I got hit with by someone. Yeah, I'm honestly still reasonably proud of this chassis, even though it's in retrospect didn't perform awfully well. It did get like second place, which I'm honestly still shocked that this thing, that robot, as horribly built as it was, because the wheels were all the way at the back and it was just horrible to drive, and the weapon barely really even did anything. I am honestly still shocked it managed to get a second place finish. Like I I just don't know how that. I'm honestly not sure how that happened. um. Right. So anyway, moving on from that catastrophe, that's the little guy. We move on to Fluorine Mark IV, which was my first time trying to design a spinner. Here's a failed test print I had, which I eventually reused the front bit as like a skid pad for later down the line for Fluorine Mark V during like Orlando Maker Fair. And here is the chassis for Fluorine 4. A lot thicker, and honestly, when I made this thing, I was really, really, really probably too proud of how it came out because like I thought it looked a lot better than this, which I mean it kind of does. Like first of all, the front part is missing because I cut it off to get like to try and salvage the motor and like a motor mount because I couldn't actually unscrew the screws holding like the mount in. But like I'm honestly still kind of proud of. Again, I'm still kind of proud of this thing. Like the screw holes are like inset into the chassis, so the lid can like be flush with the top, which I thought was a nice little touch. The mounts for the drive motors are nice and thick and big, which I thought was pretty cool. Um, Let me see what else. Lots of room in here. It's pretty deep, probably too deep. Um, I definitely had the holes for the drive motors figured out, locked in at this point, so that wasn't a problem. Um, and I was even just proud of the design for the motor mount, which it's gone as you can obviously see, but it like came down to like a triangle thing at the front. There were like four holes that went through it, and I would like put like a nut in, and then like bolt down the motor mount that way. The one problem was I also like it was actually it was pretty much impossible to actually remove those bolts and screws because when I tried to unscrew the screws holding the motor mount in, it would just spin the entire thing bolts as well because the bolt wasn't really held in with anything. I did try putting a bunch of like hot glue into the space where the bolt was, but that didn't work. So eventually I just kind of gave up and just cut it off. I never even used that motor again. I don't know why I did that. And also, like, again, it even had a little tiny indentation at the front for the wires for the motor to go into. I was like, because I was trying to be fancy, I guess. So yeah, and honestly, it kind of sucks that this version of the robot only ever had a single fight for all the work I put into it. But sometimes that's just how this sport works. Right, hold on, let me clear this up a little bit. Just let me pause for a Okay, resumed. All right, we're good. Right, sorry about that. I just had to clear some things off the bed that I'm using as a table. Anyway, so Fluorine 4 marked improvement, I suppose, and that leads us to Fluorine 5. And this right here is the original chassis I 3D printed for the fifth version of Fluorine. Um, Now the reason this chassis was never used, as you can see, this is pretty small. It's basically just a square where I put everything inside. Um, so the problem with here is, like, the chassis worked and everything fit inside it, but during testing with this thing, when I spun up the weapon in the test box we had at like Solar Park, which is where the Gator BattleBots team tests things. During a spin up test, it something happened with the robot and it like basically tore itself apart because I think I was using like machine screws or something to try and hold the robot together, which is what I'd used for the previous versions of the robot, and it worked fine. The problem was with this type of design, using machine screws is, let's just say, not a good idea, and it's all the screws basically vibrated out, and the weapon mount like tore itself off. So I was told that by like a bunch of people that I should try using threaded inserts in the robot in like where the holes were so I could actually thread like a screw in there so it wouldn't like pull out. So that's what I tried to do with this. I got a bunch of threaded inserts, put them on like a soldering iron, and tried to melt them into the holes on this chassis. The problem was that didn't work at all. When I tried to like screw in the screws, the thread insert just kind of turned in place instead of actually tightening the screws. And that was partially because I think this didn't have enough how do I put this, like, meat on the bones, I guess. Like the infill wasn't high enough, I think, was part of the problem. So I tried to fix that by like melting in a bunch of extra TPU, and that still didn't work. And at that point, I'd kind of just butchered this chassis completely. So I just kind of decided to throw it away and start over and make a new one. This time with slightly bigger holes to so I could put in plastite screws, which leads us to this design, which is uh so a notable difference is that suddenly I added a bit of a butt to it. I'm honestly not sure why I did that. I think it's because I wanted to have more space so I had more leeway when putting things inside so I wouldn't have to worry about trying to stuff everything in there and risk shorting something. Um I don't know why there's this stupid tail. Oh wait, I actually don't remember. The reason this tail thing is back here is because on the first version of like the weapon frame, which is like the metal thing that holds the weapon on, um, it had a whole it was like a full complete rectangle at the back instead of just having the two spokes. It actually connected at the back, and so I there was an extra hole there for me to put another extra screw. Um, I quickly realized this was kind of redundant and kind of, well, dumb. So I did get rid of this in a future iteration, but I think I only used this chassis once as well. I mean, again, marked improvements from aside from that, it's pretty much unchanged from this one. Like they're basically the same thing, except this one has like a extra area at the back. And I mean, it still looks pretty good. It still has. I will say the print quality is a bit dubious on this one. You can kind of see a lot of like bumps and ridges, which TPU isn't really supposed to have if you actually know what you're doing. Like especially on the bottom, like damn. I think it's because I think my printer wasn't leveled properly, and that's what caused all this. I mean, it came out well enough. It didn't really suffer any problems during combat, though. I don't recall how many battles this thing was in. I think it was like just one event, maybe. Again, I can't quite remember. So anyway, right. Next version of Fluorine, I got rid of that weird spoke thing at the back, and uh, you'll also notice this the cut at the front, which is what Fluorine is kind of that something that's now kind of noteworthy about Fluorine is this cut at the front. The reason I moved from a flat front to this curve at the front was because I had made a custom weapon at this point instead of using a fingertech bar. This was after Orlando Maker Faire 2023, which is the first time I used a spinner, like in like the flat configuration. And so I'd made a new custom weapon. I was gonna be and I made a new custom weapon. The problem was I didn't actually check to see if the new weapon would actually fit on the robot. And when I got it and I kind of test fitted it on to see where how it looked on the robot, I realized that it can't actually spin because it's cutting into the where the front of the robot is. Whoops. So I quickly like hopped on the fusion and just cut an awkward just I just like made like a hole where the like a circle where the weapon was going to be, made it big, and just extruded that material away from the chassis and just 3D printed it. The problem was in my haste to do that, I forgot to actually put a front wall. And for some reason, I thought that was perfectly fine, and I just assumed all the stuff would just stay in there because it would be like packed in. Needless to say, that didn't happen. Even it actually happened during like a University of Florida invite-only event thing. I think it was like Scuffle in the Swamp, where I had like a grudge match with Hellfire, and a battery came out the front. Despite that happening, I still didn't think it would be a problem, and then it happened again at a future event where a bunch of wires came out the front of the robot. So I fixed that at the event by just putting tape on, but then when I got back from the event, I actually added a front wall. Something else you'll notice on this version of the robot is a really, really tiny hole right here. And that's because when I got rid of that weird spike thingy, I forgot to actually fill in that hole from where that hole is on there. And so that was something that stayed over for like one more iteration before I finally got rid of it. Aside from that, no real changes. Like it's still the same exact shape. Right. Okay, here's the next version of Fluorine. This one, uh, honestly, again, not really much to say aside from the fact I added a front wall because, duh. Um, and I also added a modified the front lip thingy where the wires come back to the interior of the robot from the weapon. Again, not much different. Like it's still basic design. I really stuck with this giant butt thing for quite a while. Um, something you'll notice is this weird like scar at the front of the robot, and that's from Hellfire because at the only I think I use this also at only one event. Let me actually check. I have like a bunch of fights pulled up at the second I have been referencing. Sheer flow, flares, magnet, tempest, Hellfire. Okay. Um, I went to Tampa Roboticon 2023 with this thing, and I fought Hellfire with this, and I had like a wedge, which I had specially made just for him and other horizontal spinners. The problem was the wedge wasn't actually bent into shape yet. It was just a flat metal plate. So I stuck that onto the robot anyways because I had nothing else really to fight him with. And that's how this giant gash was cut in the front from Hellfire just cutting right into the robot, like repeatedly. um, and so I fixed it by just plastic welding the bit back together. You can still kind of see on the inside that gash because I never actually fixed the inside bit. As far as I know, I never used this chassis again after that. I don't think. Let me actually. I mean, I'm just referencing a fight here. Come on. Oh, jeez. Oh, wait, is that the. You can tell how professional this is. Lol. So, yeah. Because of the damage I took, I had to print a new chassis. I didn't really trust this thing to take another hit because, again, it was just plastic welded. I didn't really trust my ability to plastic weld things. So, that brings us to this one, which I believe I used at. Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake earlier. I meant to say Orlando Maker Faire Robot Ruckus 2022 is when I first used the spinner, not 2023. This is the one I took to 2023 Orlando Maker Faire, I believe. Yeah, the reason I know this is because of this giant gash in the side from Jordan when I was in the Rumble, and I was upside down. He just cut right into me and just tore a wheel off, which was great. Again, really not much to say. I'll be honest. There's really less to say about this than I expected. I think is this the fight where I? Hold on, I'm just looking. Look again. I believe. Oh yeah, this is also the first chassis to actually use the have holes in it at the back for the proper power switch with like the screw instead of a headphone jack, which I'd finally gotten rid of after probably too long. I'll be honest. Also, something I just realized I've forgotten to mention completely because, like I said, I'm great at this. I just remembered something. This is the version of Fluorine where I finally moved the wheels forward instead of keeping them at the back. Because for the longest time, the wheels had kind of stayed in the same position near the back of the robots, which is a holdover from pretty much the original version 1 uh, with the wheels at the back because for some reason I just couldn't move past that for some reason. And fun fact, actually, as well, I just remembered is Fluorine, I believe, is still to this. Actually, you know what? No, I'll mention that later. You can tell I didn't plan this at all. This is really spread the moment. So again, I moved the wheels forward, which really made the robot a lot easier to drive because I wasn't. Now the wheels were a lot closer to the center of mass instead of like awkwardly skidding. But yeah, yeah, because again, the reason I pretty much have to make a new chassis for Fluorine after every event I go to, or at least I used to, because I take damage like this, and I'd be like, I probably shouldn't reuse this chassis just in case. Again, you can see the exceedingly dodgy. A very consistent thing with this robot is the very dodgy TPU printing. Yeah, make sure when you print TPU that your bed is level and also that your TPU is actually dried, because I consistently fail to actually dry the stuff out before I use it. Don't do that. Right, so after this event is when I finally made the decision to switch. When I finally got rid of that butt, or like I got rid of most of that butt, and moved to this design, which is a lot more familiar. Now, sadly, I don't actually have the chassis I printed immediately after, well, Maker Faire, like my next chassis. I don't have it with me. I think I left it at my house, but it pretty much looks. Uh, yeah, it pretty much looks exactly like this one. Let me look here. Skylift, Haroon. Okay, actually, I'll just skip to this one because they're basically the same design. This is the chassis design I used moving forward. This is like a test print, I think, that I never used because I forgot to add like a fillet. Or I think it's. I think also. I don't think I ever actually used this chassis specifically because I think I made it too thin. I didn't really feel like I could trust it much. And also, you'll notice that it's completely flat instead of having like an inset where the bar, the frame goes. See, I never used that one. This one I did use. I didn't use this. This one I didn't use at the St. Lucie Robot Renegades for 2024. I don't have that chassis on me, sadly. But this one I used at the next event. It's basically the same exact design, except this one actually is slightly different in that the first version of this chassis that I actually used, I made a slight mistake when I made this inset. I only made it 4 millimeters deep instead of 4.7 millimeters deep, which meant that the weapon frame stuck up just a little bit. It didn't really affect much, I'll be honest. It was just kind of an aesthetic thing. Um, Again, you'll see the classic. Something that's been consistent for the design is these motor holders, which I'll be honest, I'm getting rid of finally in the latest version because they just don't really do much of anything anymore. So I'm fine getting rid of those so I can save a bit of weight. And this version again, it's first of all, it's obviously I mentioned this before, it's inset, so the weapon frame now doesn't have to be as wide as the robot itself to be flush with everything. Uh, I'm thinking. Uh, so yeah, so I could actually insert into the chassis to make it look a bit more neat. Um, yeah, not much really else to say. Again, I just kind of made it smaller, and also the print quality kind of went up for some reasons. This one feels nice and smooth and not awkwardly rough. The reason I only used this chassis was only used in one event is because I took a massive gash to the back, as you can see right here, that went clean through the robot. Because something else that is consistent with this chassis design is that it's very low infill and also very low wall count. I think I only used like 2 walls and also like 15% infill because the chassis on Fluorine isn't meant to take a hit. It's really only meant to serve as just a box to put all the stuff in. It isn't meant to offer much in the way of protection. That's the weapon's job. I kind of go for a more offense, less defense, or like a good offense is the defense kind of thing with the design of the robots. Yeah. So pretty much, if I get turned around and I shows my back to someone, this happens. I'm honestly again kind of surprised that I didn't get that. Nothing really actually broke when I was hit. I think I was hit by Mr. Breeze in my first fight with him at Build Fight Fun Tallahassee. And because this chassis was kind of wrecked, in my opinion, after that fourth fight of the event for me, I had to switch to the backup chassis, which is the one I used in St. Lucie, which again, I don't have, sadly enough. Like, I really wish I had it. I'd show it off. Wait, did I put it up here? No, this is nah, no, this isn't it. This is just a failed misprint of I think this version of the chassis, and the reason this is a failed misprint is because this part of the robot got uplifted during the process, meaning I couldn't use these holes in the side. And I probably could, but like, it's just the quality isn't good enough for me to use it. Again, make sure to use your TPU properly, kids. So yeah, this chassis is kind of a write-off. I then made this chassis for, I believe, not build, fight, fun, and again, I'm just kind of looking right now. Okay, I actually made, funny enough, this version of chassis is the version I use next. At the Gainesville Build Fight Fun event, and I'm actually still using it because it just hasn't really taken enough damage for me to just not use it. So yeah, that's this version of the chassis right now, meaning that this chassis has been for like 3 events and it's still kicking. Like, aside from some tiny gouges or bites from like Gumbo and this shot right here from Tyrone, chassis's still fine. So I'm probably gonna keep using it for the foreseeable future, even though it's basically the same. See, this is again. I can't really show you how it looks because the robot's currently assembled. So I can't really show you. That being said, I actually kind of can because I also have this. This is, I don't know why. I'm trying to think why I made this one. This one I used. This is the chassis I used at 2024 Orlando Maker Faire. At least for, God, I can't remember actually. I think I used this for all my fights. I'm trying to remember. Okay, this is the I voted sticker. I'm know I'm doing badly at this because I'm currently live looking at my thing. Why did I'm trying to remember why I switched to using this chassis for Fight 4. I can only assume it's, why did I? Oh, right now I remember. I think I switched to this chassis because had to. I think like I had some motors that got like stuck in this thing, and I couldn't like get them out, or I think I just had this chassis ready to go with like a backup drive system pre-installed, and that's why I used. Yeah, I remember now. What I did was I had like several. I decided to try having another version of the robot ready to go, just in case like the drive or whatever broke in this version of the robot, and so that's why I had like another Fluorine kind of sitting around with like some of the electronics in it, so I could just quickly swap over to a backup chassis if something broke, and something did break in my third fight, I believe. So I switched to this backup chassis, which had some drive motors in it, an ESC ready to go, so I wouldn't have to wait long. The thing is, as you can clearly see, something broke in this chassis as well. It, in fact, broke so badly I still haven't actually removed all the parts yet, even though it's been like several months since the event. Um, yeah, I think this happened during the Rumble. So first of all, the ESC partially blew up, which wasn't good, and then the back came off of this motor, which also isn't good. So yeah, um, I honestly don't know why I still haven't removed the motor for this one. There's a really good reason I haven't removed the motor. It's because I actually can't physically get this hub off. Like the screws backed out all the way, but I cannot for the life of me get this thing off. I don't really know why. I only assume that something inside has been distorted, so I can't get it off. This is also completely locked up. I can't actually physically spin it. That's partially probably because the back came off. But yeah, this thing went through 2 fights before basically being written off because I couldn't get the parts off. Yeah. um, I mean, I'm pretty sure I can recover this side metal piece in these screws, and probably even this motor. I'm pretty sure this motor still works fine. I just haven't had the like time or the I honestly just keep forgetting to remove the parts from this thing, I'll be honest. um it also did take a lot of damage. Like there's a nice scrape for the back right there. There's this part here from, I think it was that Scalar X robot. Uh yeah. And also it's kind of scuffed with the print quality as well, which is consistently inconsistent, but yeah. Yeah, also the ESC does still smell a little bit. I probably should get rid of that, but I keep forgetting. Um, and yeah, that's kind of it. Like, yeah, that's, and then there's this version of the road right now, which is still using a slightly older version of the chassis. Um, yeah, I don't really have much to really add. I'll be honest. There's one little piece of trivia I like to mention, and that is, I believe, is this still true? Let me. Ah, yes. To this day, the wheels on Fluorine are still, I believe, the exact same width apart as the wheels on a Viper kit are. Because I just never bothered changing the dimension of that for some reason. Because again, I keep forgetting to, and also there's really no reason to. So yeah, it's kind of, I mean, yes, the chassis is a little bit wider, but like if you look at the interior, you'll notice. Okay, I'm not really doing the best job of demonstrating this, but like the space between the interior walls like matches the space between the exterior walls of the motors on the Viper kit. Yeah, that's just kind of a holdover from the original design because I don't know, I just never really, I don't know why I kept using that number. I guess it's because it was familiar, I guess. I can't really tell you. I just kept using it. And so yeah, that's a fun fact. Yeah, but from this all the way to pretty much this, I think it's been quite a journey iterating through these things through these couple of years. And yeah. I'm basically this just a 40-minute long video of me rambling, I realize, but like yeah, it's just kind of cool to look back and like see, where I started and kind of how my designs have evolved. Um, I mean, obviously, they're still gonna keep evolving. Like even with this chassis, the the one I have, it still has these motor mounts, which I don't really need anymore. So I'm probably gonna get. I am getting rid of those in the next design. I'm also shrinking this hole back down to something a little less big, so wires don't run the risk of falling out, just in case. Yeah, but aside from that, there's really nothing I'm gonna probably change with this chassis, radically speaking. And yeah, that's kind of a brief history of the chassis design of Fluorine throughout the years. I hope this was a fun video to watch. I hope to maybe make more once I go and re-get some of my older parts, like the weapon frame and the weapon, which are kind of the only two parts I can really do a video like this on. But yeah, this was kind of a enjoyable walk through memory lane, and I hope you enjoyed it. Um, Hope to do more videos like this. Like I just said, I'm repeating myself because I don't know how to end videos. But yeah, that'll be me, Darren Catalane of Team Paladins Robotics, signing off for now. I will talk with all of you at some point in the future.